What's going on, you guys? Rasati out here in Singapore, and welcome back to the Night Owl podcast. So we're still in COVID. We're still working on this. We're trying to get to June, hopefully really, really hard that June is the end of this, right? We start to get back into another version of normal, get back into socializing a little bit more with some distancing measures, of course, but trying to make sure that, we come back and fill the economy and get back to, our human socialness, basically. But in the meantime, I want to address something that's been like bugging me a little bit. I am noticing more and more that the way that the news is worded, the way that things are reported to us, is not really presented in such a manner that actually brings us together. It's actually more to drive a wedge, and I don't know if they intentionally do that or not, but it's something that I'm noticing more and more. It's kind of getting irritating. So for those of you who have or haven't, I'm not sure, but I subscribe to the moh.gov SG updates via WhatsApp. So they send me a message every so often talking about, this many cases and this many, this, blah, 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 all the numbers, right? And as much as it is good to know, and it does help me understand that, home-based businesses can resume as of yesterday, and that, things can slowly get back to normal, or, the numbers are climbing or they're reducing or whatever the case may be. I understand that. But there's an aspect of that message that still I feel is kind of unnecessary. It makes us feel that there is someone to blame, or a way to drive a wedge between our community, and it's gonna come to a head when everyone comes back into the workforce and starts not working from home so much, but frequenting public spaces like malls and cafes and restaurants and stuff like that. So there's an aspect of this data that they're sending out to everybody that says how many of these cases are actually PRs of Singaporeans. As much as I love our nation, and as much as they're very nationalist oriented, that's cool. I get it. You should take pride in your country. But when you do that, you're also driving a wedge between regular people. At the end of the day, we're all human. Yes, I'm from Singapore, but I lived overseas for the majority of my life. A lot of people who are PRs have immigrated here on purpose because they find that this is a great country to raise a family in or to make a living in. But for those people who are here on work permits, here are commuting, maybe they're coming in from Malaysia, or they're at the foreign worker dormitories, all of those people, they're still people. They're doing the best they can. They're here for a reason. They're not here to spread anything. They're here to spend their time working hard to build the infrastructure that we, take pride in, that we show off, that we are celebrated for, because Singapore is the cleanest country in Asia and all of those things. We have the greatest airline for a long time. We have the greatest airport. We have clean water. We're very, very efficient, all those things, but it's built on the backs of people who aren't able to call this their national country. Like, this is not where they were born. This is not where they're from originally. And so I see things like this where you say, of this 800 new cases, only this many are Singaporeans and PRs. It's almost like saying, it's the other people that are doing this. It's not us. We're okay. The other people that are here are doing this to us. But what does that mean for people who are like, not just foreign workers from India, but people from the US, people from other areas in Europe? There are a lot of Angmos out here who are working as well, and they're not necessarily PRs or Singaporeans, but they're here on work passes. They're here because, their work needs them here in this office managing whatever it is, and then eventually they'll serve out their time. They will, get promoted and get to another different location. A lot of the people that were working at the Grand Hyatt with me in middle to upper management were not from Singapore. They're from another location in the world, and they came here to work. So all of these people are still Singaporean to me because they're here working. They're spending their lives here. They're working and living here. I feel badly because there are a lot of Malaysians who spend a lot of their time on our side of the border working, trying to make a living, trying to support their families and stuff. And we should consider them part of our community as well. So when you put out statistics that segregate us a little bit, it kind of makes me a little worried, because I don't know if you are intentionally doing it or not, but the message is still received the same way. Now, looking at people, you can't tell who's Singaporean and who's not. You can't tell who's really Chinese and who's not. You can't tell if someone's mixed or not a lot of times, because there are so many mixed children out there. There's so many people who have, for generations now have been marrying who they fall in love with and having children. And, you can't really look at their face and tell their descent anymore, because the bone structure isn't like that anymore. Once upon a time, yeah, you could look at somebody and tell if they were from Korea, or if they were from Taiwan, or if they were from China. But right now, in this day and age, you can't really tell that anymore. You really can't. So I feel like there is ample reason to worry about anger and racism and intolerance because of the way we slant our news. It's the way we report things. I know you want the digits. You want to know how many of these people are, what race or whatever, or whether they're nationals or not, or any of those things. But I don't see how that's actually inclusive. I don't see how that's actually helpful. If you if you were to report a number just as a number and tell us how many cases are reported today and how many of them are from known clusters and how many of them are from new clusters, then we understand. We don't need to know where. We don't need to know what kinds of people are spreading it. It doesn't matter. Because honestly, it really depends on how they're moving about the nation. There are a lot of people who are Singaporean nationals who, because they couldn't take the four walls of their house, went and got a part-time job real quick. They went and they were able to, to deliver food as a Grab driver, or they went to work as, hospital staff to be able to help the staff cope with the amount of people that were coming in and out of hospitals and doctors' offices. People do things the best way they know how, and a lot of times, even though you can track a cluster back to one or two people, it really depends on who the carrier is. A lot of us are well-bodied human beings. We are able-bodied human beings. We have a good immune system. So are you telling me that the cluster starts with a person who is disabled or has a compromised immune system? Is that where the clusters are tracked from? Like, what does that really mean? What are you actually telling us? Because a lot of us can carry these genes. We can carry markers. You can carry symptoms. You can carry the virus without even knowing that you're a host. You have no idea. So I think it's really important to pay attention to the way we report things. We report based on just numbers, perfect. Don't add in any other statistics because it gives people ammunition to go out and pick fights where there really shouldn't be any. We should be more together now as a result of the circuit breaker, as a result of the stay home, stay safe for SG measures that we've taken, rather than coming out of this and being able to point fingers and avoid certain people because, we have our own prejudices. So I wish people would be very, very careful. The reason I say this also is because it's not just because of coronavirus. I've been seeing this for years now. I saw this after 9/11. I was in the US at the time, and until then, I didn't matter. People did not see me. I flew under the radar. I was like wallpaper. And it wasn't until after 9/11, I was in college. I will never forget the day I rolled out of bed getting ready to go to class, and suddenly they said everything's canceled. The Twin Towers were hit, and I was like, huh? And I didn't know what that would mean for me, but in the coming weeks, I definitely understood. Because suddenly I was of Arabic descent. Suddenly I was one of them. And by them, I mean those people that do things that no one can understand and no one wants to be a part of because they're bad people. You can't look at people and say that. There's no way. Another example of that would be the race war in Sri Lanka, unfortunately. And yes, I still say Sri Lanka because that's the name of the country. I understand people get very, very offended, and it's almost like you have to choose sides in order to be able to claim that you're from Sri Lanka or that you speak Sri Lankan Tamil. And I feel badly because if that's the only way you can define yourself, I shudder to think what else you're able to accept or to embrace. I will say this, I don't choose a side. I don't like the fact that we fight about this so much. I don't like the fact that, people have to choose one side or another because in my family, I have both Tamil and Sinhalese people. In my family, I know for a fact my dad's side of the family speaks both Tamil and Sinhalese. Why? Because they had to. It was the way to get through and get along in Sri Lanka at the time. My family was physically there during the riots. I wasn't. I wasn't born there. I'm lucky that I wasn't born there. I've been back a couple times and I get it. There is like deep-seated hatred. I get that. There is really unrest when it comes to people and how they're being treated. But I need you to understand, if it wasn't for some Sinhalese people, some of my family members would never have escaped. And it wasn't because they were Sinhalese that they helped us. They helped us because we treated them well and they treated us well. There was mutual respect there. So for every person that, may be a nationalist or Tamil Tiger, supporter or claim the Sri Lankan flag, it really just comes down to this idea that, this is how I identify myself. And I'm not doing it to offend you. I'm not doing it to segregate myself from you guys. I'm not saying that I'm better than you are. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that You can't define it that easily. It's not that simple. It really isn't. My great aunt's name is Valupule. I have, oh my gosh, I can't remember his name now. We have so many Sri Lankan, Sinhalese names, and Tamil names as well in my family, in my immediate family. I mean, we have more than that. I mean, in Singapore, I have Chinese aunts. I have Malay aunts. I have people who have converted to Christianity, to Islam, who have they have converted to Buddhism, or you know, any one of a number of religions, but they did what they did because it made their lives a little bit easier. It made more sense to them, and I'm not one to knock any of those things. This is why my favorite color is gray. There is no black and white. There is no easy answer for anything. There is no good and evil, because good has the potential to turn to evil, and evil has the potential to change and transform into good as well. It's just circumstance. What would you do if you were in that position? For everyone that has something to say about another race, I challenge you to stand in their shoes and see if you could do what they did, or do different, if you could choose differently. For anyone that says, oh yeah, you know, rape victims, they be asking for it. You should see the way these girls dress. I dare you to live a life in their shoes and check it out from their point of view and see if they really are bucking the system or asking for it in any way. Or do these people that really need to change their behavior, is it coming from a place where for generations they've never been corrected? It's never been looked at as a bad thing. It's never been looked at as a despicable practice or a undesirable trait for men to treat people this way. And it's not just men. God, I know women who have raped men as well, raped boys. I've heard of men who have raped boys as well. There is no black and white, you guys, and you can't tell by looking at people either. You can't judge people for their behaviors. You need to understand where it's coming from. What is their pain? Why do they think this is okay? What told them that this was appropriate or acceptable? A lot of times it's our society. A lot of times it's the things we turn a blind eye to that we could have prevented a million years ago, but we didn't see fit to change or to speak up about or say something about. I've heard of so many cases where a child was bounced from foster care to foster care, like different foster care facilities, foster care families, and in every one of those situations they were treated like a paycheck. An extra mouth to feed, so the government will support you and you'd get a paycheck because you're taking care of somebody and taking it off the system's hands, but they would still pay you for it. And as a result, they grew up with some really dark, deep wounds. And because you didn't feel like they were your responsibility, you didn't actually take the time to teach them better. You didn't take the time to care. I've seen people who come from rich families, and because there was money, they throw money at the problem, and the money was never the problem. They did not feel seen or heard or appreciated, and as a result, they lashed out the only way that they knew how, because at some point they learned that if they do things, if, you know, good attention and bad attention are the same, it's still attention, they're going to do what they need to do to get their human needs met. So what do you do in those situations? How do you fix the system at that point? It comes all the way down to individual citizens. If you see something wrong, say something. If you notice somebody is in pain, reach out. If you notice it is your responsibility to do something about it, God wouldn't have given you the eyes to notice otherwise. You wouldn't have turned your head that way otherwise. So I urge you guys, the way the media puts things, the way the data is delivered, it's easy to separate all of us. It's easy to look at us like, oh, those are Chinese people and those are Malay people, and look at all those Chinese people outside, you know, doing what they're not supposed to be doing. Of course they get away with it. They're the majority. Nah, stop all that noise. Stop hating on them. You're perpetuating the cycle. You're becoming part of the problem and not part of the solution. To divide each other is easy. To find reasons to unite each other, that takes real strength. That takes real compassion. That takes real heart. We can accomplish so much more if we join hands and do this together. Like, really do it together. Not like, you know, oh, because it says together, we're going to post the hashtag together on everything. No, it's not like that. I'm talking about really be together. You can find something you like in everybody you meet. You can. It's easy to point out things you don't like. It's going to take a little heart. It's going to take a little strength. It's going to take a little character to find things you do like about somebody. I'll put it to you this way. When I was in school, I had a falling out with one of my teachers. And it's one of the teachers I respected the most, but I got mad because it felt like she was picking on me. She picked on me, and it was easy to tell myself that she didn't like me. What was hard was to approach her and ask her, why do you do this? Why do you pick on me? Why is it there's a class of 25 and I'm the one you consistently call on to answer particular questions, knowing full well I probably don't know the answer? And it wasn't until I asked her and she was able to answer honestly. I was thankful for that. She was able to answer honestly. She told me, look, I see more potential in you. I don't want you to be stuck here. I want you to move forward. I want you to do so much more with your life. I don't want you to be the kid that everyone comes to because they haven't done their homework. They want to copy yours. I don't want you to be the kid that, helps other people graduate because you're passing answers during a test. I see more in you. And it wasn't until I got that answer that I realized, oh my God, she cares. She has a funny way of showing it. And I didn't understand it at the time, but she cared. And this has happened on more than one occasion in my life. I remember when my daughter was going to school, my stepdaughter was going to school, and she got into an altercation with one of her teachers, and she was convinced the teacher was picking on her. And guess what? My ex-husband was like, oh yeah, she's picking on you. Let me go talk to her. I'm going to fix her. I was like, look, wait. Why don't you solve your own problem? Why don't you go talk to your teacher and ask her? Ask her what's going on. Ask her what the problem is. Why? Because chances are you told yourself she didn't like you, but that's not what she said ever. So you need to understand the direction behind her behavior. Why is she behaving that way with you? And what she found out was the same thing. She was being fair. And my stepdaughter was being lazy at the time. She was not living up to her potential. She was doing the bare minimum to get by. And once you realized that the teacher liked her and respected her and thought she could do better, guess what? She rose to the expectation. She understood the actual expectation. She rose to the expectation. All it took was for her to find one thing she liked about the teacher. And she liked the fact that she cared. And she never slacked off in that class ever again. Sometimes it's about the expectation. Sometimes it's about, what your friends are doing so you don't sound like you're against all of them. You don't want to lose your friends, right? But ultimately, I would rather be in a group of people that wants to see everybody win, regardless. Because if everybody wins, that means all aspects of life are handled. The people who are really good at fitness and health and nutrition will succeed and teach the rest of us. And the people who are really good at arts and sciences and performances and music, all that stuff, will handle our entertainment and help us find more and more creative ways to express ourselves. And the people who are nurturers by nature, caregivers, medical doctors, nurses, they could be something as simple as, physical therapists. If they're allowed to excel, that means the rest of us always know where we can go if we need help, if we need support, if we need a little extra TLC and some care. A rising tide raises all ships. And if we can find a way to rise together, we all succeed together. That means there are no have and have-nots. There is no us and them. It's just us. It's just extensions of me. So pardon the rant, but understand where I'm coming from. It's easy to divide us, and divided we do fall. It's easy to divide us and have us feel like we can't reach out to somebody else because they look different, because they're not going to understand what I went through. It's not the case. Guess what? Chinese people feel jealousy and pain and anger and defeat and depression and anxiety just like Indian people do, just like Malay people do, just like Angmos do. There's more that unites us than there is that divides us. And if we could just focus on those things, there's nothing we couldn't solve. I love you guys. I'll catch you again soon. Bye.